So you think the real purpose of something like this is simply to attack a castle from a distance and bring the wall down?
Yes.
Yeah.
500 years before Newton's apple, medieval engineers had figured that trebuchets with a swinging counterweight are the most efficient at using the force of gravity. Like adding wheels to a fixed counterweight trebuchet, the hinge allows the swinging counterweight to descend further in a straighter line, capturing more energy for the throw. 15 years ago, Renown came across the notebook of the 13th century French architect Villard de Honnecourt. In it, he found the plan for the base of a trebuchet and a description of the swinging counterweight box. Unfortunately, the page showing the rest of the trebuchet was missing. But with his knowledge of medieval carpentry and his experience of building over 30 small trebuchets, Renown realized that if the design were ever built, it would be monstrous, the height of a 5-story building. Ever since this discovery, Renown has wanted to construct the full-size trebuchet. Finally, he will get the chance at Castle Urquhart in Scotland. At the start of a medieval siege, a trebuchet engineer would typically seek out as big a throwing arm as possible. Renown inspects a good-sized oak log that he hopes will be suitable. Using the same geometric principles employed by the medieval engineers who built castles, cathedrals, and siege machines, Renown starts designing his trebuchet. The key decision is where on the throwing arm to position the main pivot point, or fulcrum. Medieval engineers worked this out by observation. In this largely illiterate society, carpenters used animal figures like these as an aid to remember geometric formulas. Now that Renown knows where to put the main axle, he can design the trestle, base, and capstans to raise the counterweight box, because they are all sized in proportion to the throwing arm. But just as he begins building the trebuchet, Renown is called back to France. In his absence, work progresses on the base. Work also begins on drilling out the main axle hole in the throwing arm. Unfortunately, there is some confusion about the size of the opening, and a nasty surprise awaits Renown's return.
Hi, good morning.
Renown's been away for a couple of days, and while he was away, we cut the axle hole. It's quite apparent that a lot of meat has gone from the timber, and we're left with quite thin sections on either side.
I think the beam, the throwing arms can break here, in this part.
Renown's concern is that we've gone too much to this extreme where we've taken out too much wood of the throwing arm and made the axle too strong. His concern, of course, is in our first throw that it's going to do something like that.
Renown is left with no alternative but to hope that a couple of planks will be strong enough to splint the weakened throwing arm. Finally, work starts on raising the great trestles. With each passing day, the situation at Castle Urquhart more and more resembles a siege of old. With 2 trebuchets to finish, there is a nagging feeling that Renown's machine may not get done before the timber framers must return home. Over at Wayne's trebuchet, work on attaching the lead weights is finally finished. All that remains is to cock the arm. Even with the help of pulleys, this requires 40 people. With a 13,000-pound counterweight, it's a much bigger job than anyone imagined. And it will have to be repeated for each fling.
Okay. All right, Andy, let's get in here.
The trigger mechanism is not strong enough and buckles alarmingly as it takes the full weight of the throwing arm.
It's bending as we're releasing the arm, and we're wondering whether it can hold the weight right now.
To avoid an accidental firing, they reinforce it with a length of chain.
They've got lots of engineers on this, and maybe they've got it right, but I think it's quite difficult to get it right.
It's chaos. The sun is going down. I don't have a clue whether or not we'll finish even one of these machines on time.
Well, we're under the gun now. It's kind of touch and go whether we're going to get this thing put together and actually flinging both machines, but if I know this crew, come hell or high water, we're going to make this thing fling. There goes your light.
The next morning, a 250-pound sandstone ball is quickly positioned in the sling for the first throw.
I'd rather have it below the sling. It's got about a 50% chance of going in the right direction. It could go in the lake there by mistake, because these adjustments are not well known to us.
You ready? This is it. 1, 2, 3, fire in the hole!
Even with 12 timber framers pulling, the firing pin won't budge.
It's quite normal that. I mean, triggers are very stiff. We found that at home. It takes a lot of effort, which is as well in some ways.
Despite Hugh's predictions that a trebuchet on wheels would shake itself to pieces, the reverse is true. Wheels dampen the recoil. Everything appears to be working as Wayne predicted, except the range. The ball only traveled about 170 yards, falling short of the wall.
What are we? 30 yards short and about 5 feet low. I thought it was flat, which means we got to, I think, shorten the sling so it releases sooner and goes higher, which should get us to the wall.
Just like his medieval counterpart, Wayne uses a process of trial and error to alter the trebuchet's range by adjusting the length of the sling. With the first throw, a long sling resulted in a late release and a low trajectory. By shortening the sling, Wayne believes the ball will be released earlier, resulting in a higher path. Wayne's adjustments have the desired effect. The second throw has perfect range, just missing the target to the right by 2 feet.
I think we took the king's ear off.
Good
job, Wayne.
Excellent.
And so it needs a slight adjustment, and then we're going to be a direct hit.
Tomorrow is another day.
What will be the last day for Wayne and his team dawns, with the wall still intact, but clearly under threat. Meanwhile, Renault's trebuchet is still not finished. This morning, they rush to complete the counterweight box that is hinged to the throwing arm.
We've got the one treb built. The other one is about 99% of the way there. We flung 2 stones last night with Wayne's treb, but we really don't want to let Renault down, and we don't want to let ourselves down. We really want to see this thing fly before we go.
Still, with time so short, it's unclear that Renault will get a chance to fire his trebuchet at all.
What? Well, it's got to, somebody's got to fun. Yeah, we're off the ground here.
After last night's narrow miss, Wayne's trebuchet is repositioned to be more in line with the target.
All we're
we're doing is shifting it slightly to the left. We're throwing to the right a little far. So we've shifted about 1 inch so that hopefully we're dead on center.
With the same 250-pound ball as yesterday and the sling at the same length, Wayne believes he is now dead on to hit the wall with his third attempt.
One.
The third shot is identical to the second in distance. At a range of 200 yards, adjusting the wheels 1 inch to the left, place the missile bang on top of the hoarding.
We've gotten wood. I don't know if we've contacted any stone yet, but we've knocked the hoarding pretty well. We've made it a little high. I'll come down a little bit.
That must be the old hole there, mustn't it? That's the hole. It's still a bit on this side, isn't it? If you'd been standing under that hoarding, you'd have had a jolt.
With the trebuchet lined up on the target, Wayne only has to shorten the range by a hair to hit the stone battlements below.
So this time what we've done is lengthen the sling about 6 inches. So we're hoping to fire a little bit flatter and get the top of the hole, top of the wall.
Quite difficult, I think, probably, isn't it, on those small adjustments? I mean, do you think?
Yeah, small adjustments are difficult to do.
We could perhaps not get so lucky this time, but it's been very good so far, hasn't it?
Worried that this may be the last attempt, Wayne makes a sudden change of plan.
Fire the hole!
He replaces the 250-pound ball that he's been using with a jumbo 300-pounder. Wayne figures that the heavier ball, clocked at a speed of 127 miles an hour, should breach the wall. But he's wrong.
We're going back to the 250 ball instead of the 300 and see if we can get a little more height.
They've only got time for one more shot, the American team, and well, they've been very near, but they might miss it again. And if they don't get it, do you think you can get it with yours?
Maybe we are more lucky and we can destroy this wall.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. It's French against Americans.
No, it's not. No. It's not against. That's your way.
Putting on their kilts for good luck, Wayne's team rushes to get in one final shot.
We did it! Come take a look at the rocks over here. It just pulverized the stone on the inside.
It confirms what we came here to prove, doesn't it? That we've had a lovely hit smack in the middle, and it smashed it, and it's busted it right through to the back. So it's quite obvious that if you've got one of these trebuchets, and you've got a castle like this, and you've got plenty of time to shoot it, you're going to knock it into a powder. We can reduce this to rubble.
Intoxicated with success, the timber framers bid adieu to the Highlands. But the next morning, Renault is heartened to find that he's not been completely abandoned.
You know, if you put your safety chain on...
Ed Levin and a handful of the Americans have decided to stay on in Scotland to help finish the job.
I'm sure it's good enough.
No, it's linked into the second
What
hook.
happened?
The biggest concern is whether the throwing arm has been fatally weakened at the point where the main axle passes through it. To avoid stressing the arm, Renault decides to only partially load his counterweight, using 4 tons of sand in the 12-ton capacity box. But there are risks to this approach.
We're all suitably cautious in having the 250-pound sandstone ball end up in the castle wall rather than in the loch or drop down on the machine or any of the other places it has historically been known to go.
Come on, come on, come on.
Nobody knows quite what they're doing.